It hasn't said that it's going live yet. Oh, we're live.
You're live.
Hi guys. Welcome to Josh and Evan's post LSAT breakdown, and we're going to talk tonight about evaluating your score. When you get that score and it hits your email box, I think the first thing you want to do is, look at what schools that might get you into, or if not, you're thinking about a retake. So we're going to try and cover all those topics tonight. And, I've been through this so many times with so many tutoring students in the past that, sometimes this is a really great day, score release day, and it's one of the better days you're going to have. Other days, it's really one of the worst days you're going to have because you didn't live up to um, your potential. And people who turned out to be just fabulous LSAT takers eventually have bad first runs. And I've seen people who were prepping with, 175 scores on all their practice tests going into this, get then a 165. I've seen everything, but then I've seen those people rise on the body of their dead self, so to speak, and come back and crush the LSAT. So don't encourage, okay? And we're going to try and talk you through some of these issues tonight. Josh, do you want to do a little self-introduction?
Yeah, so my name is Joshua Craven. I am one of the founders of lawschooly.com, and I started out with a 152 on my original cold diagnostic LSAT. I was able to get my score up to a 177 by testing, and that 177 was a really, it was a life changer for me. So I know how important tonight is for everybody who got their score back. I know that a lot of you, are either very happy with your score or very disappointed or somewhere in between. And so our point, what we kind of like to do tonight is just kind of help you guys evaluate your performance and help you make a decision on how to take the next step, whether you're going to retake, whether you're going to, start applying. Our goal tonight is just to kind of help some of you figure out what your next step is and what you should do. And, we really didn't plan on doing anything tonight. We saw everybody panicking on our Facebook page and our YouTube, our Twitter stream, and we just wanted to come in and give you guys a little guidance because I know a lot of you are just really at a loss for what to do or really just looking for a little extra guidance tonight. So we thought we'd come in and do a sort of an impromptu webinar to kind of give you some guidance.
Yeah. So I was thinking for the first thing, this morning I posted a resource that I think should be really helpful in giving yourself a basic evaluation of where your score might get you into, and that's the most recent GPA and LSAT medians. These are for the class of 2017. So that's the most recent numbers we have, and you can we put them alongside the class of 2016 numbers, so you can kind of get an idea of any trends, whether a school that you want to get into has gotten slightly competitive, a little easier. And some general trends there.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So, Evan, in general, what are you seeing? Are you seeing, I know we've seen a steady decline in the number of people taking the LSAT and the number of people applying to law school. And I was wondering, when you wrote that post, did you see any trends that LSAT scores going down? Are things getting easier to get into?
Yeah, so generally there's been another really big drop in the amount of people taking the LSAT. So you would think that that would lead to across-the-board schools getting slightly less competitive. However, there's just one aberration to note there, which is that the top 6 or so schools, the top 6, 7, 8, have not gotten any easier to get into this year from last, really, because there's some evidence that higher scorers are starting to come back to law school, right? So,
So we're talking schools like Yale, Harvard, Stanford, Columbia, U Chicago, NYU, Michigan. These guys are, pretty much still going to be very tough to get into. You're going to still need what, 171 plus?
170, yeah, 172, 173 are the medians for like the top five. You're looking at closer to a 170 for the ones just below the top five. But the thing to note is, remember that these schools, they're still far easier to get into now than they were, say, in 2009, 2010, back when Josh and I got the smart idea to go to law school. And the reality is, you're gonna have a much easier time than we did getting into one of those top schools. I know Josh got into Harvard during the year that it was probably arguably the hardest to do so. So, kudos to him. But he had both a great GPA and a great LSAT. Right now, it's a time where you're going to be seeing people getting into schools that would not have been possible to get into with the numbers that they had a few years back, and that trend's by and large continuing. So just remember, except for the top 5 or so schools where it's stabilized a bit, it's still getting easier to get into schools. Not just easier to get into, schools are giving away far more money now than they have at any time past. So it's also the best time to go to law school very cheaply. Now, is it the best time to go to law school? Well, that's going to depend on your overall circumstances. The reality is that what's driving this lower competitive atmosphere that we have right now is a much poorer job market than there's been in times past, right? So I guess I kind of want to segue into a conversation about maybe scores with which you might want to think twice about going to law school without giving it another try at a retake.
So if I got my score back today and I got, say, a 150, what would you give, just a blanket general recommendation on what somebody that got, say, a 150 to 155, should people in that sort of position be thinking right now?
So, this is an opinion that I share with an awful lot of experts and various commentators, and it's a belief that generally speaking, if you're 150s, there's not going to be a whole lot of law school options that I think are attractive gambles. So it's my contention that the majority of people scoring in that range are probably best advised, if you're taking a hard cost-benefit analysis of it, are best advised not to go to law school with that score. You tend to get into programs that are very competitive, dog eat dog, and there's very few jobs on the other end waiting for you. And when you look at the market, there's now much more than in the past, a lot of pretty good data available about who's getting what jobs out of each school, through the ABA required disclosures and whatnot, and then information that you might gather on my site or through one of the major news outlets. So if you do a lot of Googling, you can sort of assess what it's like to go to these programs. And I think you'll still see that in the majority of cases, it's something that most people, certainly anyone who's got the least bit of risk aversion, is probably better off avoiding. And what should you do? Should you give up on your law school dream? Well, I don't really think that we need to discuss that, especially if you're a first, a second, or even if you're on your third time taking the LSAT. You're not necessarily out of options yet. So Josh, can you talk a little bit about the experience you've had with seeing people pull themselves up out of that range?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it really depends on. So we're not saying don't go to law school. We're just saying if you are getting if you're still in the in that range where you do the research and you look and realize that the average the median salary coming out of the schools that you could get into with the score that you're your current LSAT score is, say, $50,000 a year, you're getting job 50% of the class. You got to really sit down and think. Is that something that you want to dedicate 3 years of your life to, a 50% chance of getting a $50,000 a year salary? Is that what you're kind of saying, Evan?
Yeah, totally. And obviously, there's circumstances where it's going to be a good idea for people to go to certain programs. If your ambition is to be a public interest attorney and you're going to CUNY, in the city of New York for $10,000 a year, which is very cheap, and then getting some scholarship money to boot on top of that, I don't question that path at all. Or if you're going in-state to a small public, your state's public school, and you're getting in-state tuition, and you basically know you have a job at X firm lined up afterwards, I don't question that decision at all. But what I do question is the wisdom of sort of on a slim bet of getting a high-paying job, taking on just massive mountains of debt to go to a private institution, out of your state, out of a network where you might want to go to where you might want to practice. Decisions like that are generally not what we like to see. And if just a side note, I want to talk about how to evaluate your chances at schools quickly. Take those medians and take those GPA and LSAT medians, and what you want to look at is, if your numbers are both above those medians, both your GPA and LSAT are above those, that's generally going to be a safety school that's going to be fairly likely that you're going to get into. If you have one number hovering slightly above and one hovering just a little below, that's generally a target school for you, right? And then if both your numbers are below those medians, that's going to be a reach school. So take your score now and try and realistically assess, what kind of school you're going to get into. And now's the time, if you haven't done it, to start researching what it means to go to one of those schools and what sort of paths that's likely to put you in. If you haven't done serious thinking up till now about the course that your LSAT score is going to launch you on potentially, do that thinking now. And if you don't like where you see yourself going with this current score, it'd generally be my advice to consider doing a retake. So maybe let's talk more generally about, should you retake the LSAT?
Yeah, and so just real quick, Evan, can we give a couple resources that students could go to kind of help them establish a likelihood of whether or not they can go? Of course, they can ask in our forums. I'm sorry, if they're LSAT Mastermind group members, of course, ask in our forums. If they're readers of the blog, they can ask in comment sections. There's other sites like Law School Numbers that you can kind of see historically people who've gotten in with certain numbers and who haven't gotten in with the similar numbers. I know LSAC has a sort of probability calculator on their site, don't they? Do they still have?
I think the probability calculator was not an LSAC thing, but to my knowledge, they haven't changed that. You're really going to want to either talk to me in the comments, and I'll be happy to assess your chances, or you're going to want to check data on Law School Numbers, which is user-provided data, so that's like really easy to go through and pick somebody with similar numbers to you and see what kind of results they had in a previous application cycle, bearing in mind that this next application cycle should be very, very similar to the most recent one. So if you find an applicant from 2013 to 2014 admission season who had similar numbers to you, and you see what they were able to get into with those numbers, that's going to provide a very, very accurate picture of how you're likely to do.
Okay, and say I'm evaluating these sites, and it looks like my numbers aren't quite there, Evan. Now, I'm thinking maybe if I can get an extra few points on my LSAT, maybe even an extra 5 or 6 points on my LSAT, then I'd be able to get into the school that I'd like to. How, if I'm a retaker, what are some of the things that I can do to improve the chances that I'm able to hit my target score next time around?
Yeah, so there's obviously so much you can do. I think to look at that, you have to look at the reasons why you're retaking. If you underprepared, like if you, contrary to all the advice that we're always screaming on our website, if you didn't do many prep tests, you only studied for a month, you looked at just a couple prep books, and you didn't even read them all the way through, you just skimmed them. Which, believe me, I know, like, there's reasons why this happens, right? You just didn't get your head in the game, and you weren't really giving this test the full respect it deserved. That happens. If you've done that, well, in a way, you should be kind of happy. Yeah, you might have gotten a crappy score, but the reality is you haven't even tried yet to really do this the right way. So, like, if that's the case, come into our study group where we're going to help you get through it, or come in and read our post where we're talking about what a proper study schedule looks like, and you can do this the right way. And that doesn't mean you have to sign up for a course and then devote yourself to, hauling your butt down to class every week. What it means is you have to, like, refocus your mindset and start taking this thing seriously, right? And now the other big category of people who need to retake that we see is ones who did everything right the first time and just kind of had a bad day, right? That happens a lot. Anytime that you do worse than 3 points below your practice average, you really need to consider retaking, because chances are that you're going to do better that next time you try. Josh, do you want to talk a little bit about that, like, just having a bad test day?
Yeah, we see it all the time. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people, they do take their practice tests under very ideal conditions. Maybe they give themselves a little extra minute here or an extra minute there, or they take breaks in between each sections, and they don't really take their prep tests under exam-like conditions. And I think it's really important that you are taking, or maybe they didn't even take as many practice tests as they should have. And if you've taken a look at one of our study schedules, and especially if you're a mastermind group member, or if you read the blog a lot, you'll know that we preach taking quite a lot of practice tests. I like to see students take anywhere between maybe 20 and even 25 full-time practice tests. And I think once you're at that level, or even sometimes more, and if you've done that, then I think you really know what it's like to sit down for the allotted time and crush out one of these exams. And so often we see that students aren't really honest with themselves when they're sitting down and taking practice tests and really taking them under exam-like conditions, and so they don't know exactly what to expect, or they'll only take them in the privacy of their own bedroom, and they get thrown off by all the chatter and all the people around and all that stuff that goes on with on actual test day. And other people just have a bad day. Maybe flu season's going on around right now. I know Evan just came down with a bug, and it's very common for somebody just to be sick and not be feeling well, and that can certainly affect you.
Like, even if it just kind of is going to come on in a few days, you're under all that stress. The body often decides, hey, now's a good time to get sick, so that I shut down whatever stressful thing it is I'm doing.
Yeah, and so one thing that I want to stress is that these days, that's not something that's going to, back when Evan and I took the exam, it was a much bigger deal to get a bad score on the LSAT. These days, most, the ABA has changed the reporting requirements now, so law schools only have to report your highest LSAT score to the American Bar Association, which is where everybody gets the data for rankings. Now, you still have to report all of your LSAT scores to the schools, but they really only care aside from maybe a couple of the top schools.
Yeah, basically just Yale and Harvard. You
Yeah,
know.
so law schools really are only looking at your top score these days, for all intents and purposes.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't know how I can say this any more often, or I'm always looking for ways to say this so that students will really believe me, you know? Like,
yeah,
and no matter how many times I say it, law schools only care about your highest score. They'll say that they look at the other scores. The reality is they have such a powerful incentive to only care about your highest score that that's what they do, you know? So that's all there is
yeah.
to it.
So maybe we can talk a little bit then about Evan, about the timing. So right now, we know that you know it's December is coming up, and we want to see kids getting in their applications in, sometime maybe towards the earlier half of the admissions cycle, right? So can we talk a little bit about, how delaying, if you decide I'm going to retake and I'm going to take it in December or I'm going to take it in February, how that affects your applications?
Yeah, so if you're in that earlier category I talked about where you didn't really study the first time, right now we got 6 weeks and 4 days until December. I know because I just took a peek at this countdown thing we have, and 6 weeks and 4 days is not going to be enough to do study properly if you didn't do it right at all the first time. You're going to need more time than that, right? So don't get it into your head that you can race through it in these 6 weeks and that's going to make all the difference in the world. If you really didn't do this right, we need to be looking at a February deadline. If on the other hand you're more, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
So now say I did pretty well, I just had a bad day or something wasn't wrong, didn't feel quite right. I got within maybe 5 points of my target score, and I went through that Power Score Bibles. I took a dozen at least prep tests. In that case, do you think those students could be ready for December?
Yeah, definitely. So if you're in the group that mostly has done the right things and mostly, done the stuff we recommend, which is working through problems untimed until you get a high degree of accuracy, and then doing a lot of simulated prep tests until you start to build speed. If you did that stuff and you just didn't have a good result, by all means, take it in December. In fact, that might be much better for you than holding off till February, where you might get lazy, let your skills dull a little bit. And I guess we should probably talk about.
You can do a lot. If you've already done quite a bit to prepare, you can still do quite a bit more in the next 6 weeks. So if you feel like you were getting there, but you just weren't quite hitting it today, or for the September exam, you really can make significant improvements in the next 6 weeks. So don't feel like, oh, if I didn't get the score that I wanted to hit, I have to wait until February. For the February, we're only recommending people delay until February if they really just, if you only did a bare minimum, if you maybe took a Kaplan course and read a Kaplan book, and or only took 2 or 3 prep tests. For those people, they're going to need till February. But if you're in the group that has done quite a bit, but just wasn't quite hitting on all cylinders on test day, 6 weeks, we can really, I think we can really see a lot of score improvement within that time frame. Right, Evan?
Yeah, totally. I mean, in 6 weeks, you don't even really know. You might have been right on the boundary of making a major leap to begin with, and you could be just 1 week away from that. So I say, just keep striving, and if you want to come in and join our mastermind group, we've got a lot of good advice to share with you about how to do that. And really, what I try to emphasize on the second time around when you're retaking is you need to slow it down, make sure you've got the fundamentals correct, know everything there is to know about the anatomy of arguments. There should no longer be a doubt in your mind how to analyze whether a conclusion is supported by its premises. So slow down, for a little bit, make sure you get those fundamentals down, right? And then we're going to spend the rest of the time really tackling problems with proper review and doing a lot of work under simulated conditions, right? And, you know, like, Josh, do you have anything you want to add with studying advice for retakers, how to do it differently?
Um, I mean, if you've gone through the Power Score Bibles, if you haven't gone through the Power Score Bibles, I think you need to go through the Power Score Bibles right now. So, pause this webinar and go buy those. If you look at if you go to lawschoolie.com, you look at my post on how I got a 177. Just Google best LSAT prep books. It's usually the first one that comes up. Look at the list of books on that list, and those books are all pretty much essentials, I think. So if you haven't gone through those books and taken plenty of practice tests, I think that's the first thing that you need to be doing over the next 6 weeks. I think a lot of people, their inclination is they say, oh, I took a full course prep course. I need to go take another full live prep course. Well, if it didn't work the first time, I don't necessarily know that it's going to work the second time around. And so I would say switch things up, try something different. We're, of course, here to help you kind of figure out how to structure your prep. We've got our study schedules that we recommend. We've got a free version online that you can find on our site, and we also have premium versions if you need a little extra guidance. We also have the Mastermind Study Group, and you can find that at lawschoolie.com/LSAT-mastermind. And in there we've got private forums, and we've got a lot of support that we're giving our members in there. We're actually, Evan, we're going to close that group on Wednesday this week. It's reaching capacity, so we're capping that off. So anybody that wants to join, I'm actually going to go ahead and right now it's at $179. I'm going to drop that price down for the next 24 hours to $149, so that anybody that's in this webinar can join at that price for the next 24 hours. And again, that's lawschoolie.com/LSAT-mastermind. And if you join that group, we've got a lot of support in there. We've got about 150 high-performing people, most of whom are taking the December LSAT. And it's a really great community in there. Evan and I are very active in the forums. We're doing weekly Q&A sessions and weekly webinars. So I think that's a really great option for a cost-effective way on how to prepare instead of spending $1,500 on another LSAT prep course. That might be a great option for a lot of you. And Evan, do you have anything you want to say about that? I just dropped the price down to $149, so everybody can feel free to join that if you're interested. And in there, we'll give you kind of customized one-on-one advice on how to structure your prep over the next 6 weeks. If you're going to take December, or if you're going to take February, we can help structure something for you as well.
Yeah, what we want to do is there's lots of little stuff like getting the mix right with how many problems that you've already done might be worth tracking over. And right now we're preparing like big long lists of breaking all the questions out into individual question types ranked by difficulty. So that'll be a really good way to work through and drill yourself on any weak points. Because really this retake process, for those of you who are just trying to improve a little, is going to be a process of honing in on those weak points and trying to give you the tools you need to think about those problems the right way and hammer your way through to being a master at them. So
yeah, I think that's really a big key is having a study schedule that you're working from, so you know what you're going to do. B, working through plenty of practice tests, and C, really figuring out what your weaknesses are and drilling those weaknesses and working on your weaknesses rather than working kind of haphazardly on everything. And I think we really work with the kids in the mastermind, the students in the mastermind group to help get them there. And right now we've got a database with tons of lessons, tons of premium material, and I think that'll help a lot of people out. Now, Evan, do you want to talk a little bit about, say you got your LSAT score back and you're feeling pretty good about it. If you're in that group of people, what's the next steps that you should be taking to prepare for a great application cycle?
So,
say my score back, I got a 169 or a 172 or whatever I needed to get into the kind of target school that I wanted to get into. What's the next step? What should I be focusing on tonight? Well, maybe not tonight. Tonight you should go out and celebrate. But after tonight, tomorrow, what should I sit down and start preparing?
yeah, it's a Monday night, so it's going to be a little hard to like be too much of a partier tonight. But do relax and chill. And really, the next step, it's still early, right? So what I would do is rather than rush your applications out as fast as humanly possible, the reality is that they don't really start looking at them until really as Thanksgiving approaches, like, to be honest. So, what you should really do is focus on making sure that your personal statement is perfect. Put it through multiple drafts. Get any professional writers to look over that thing, right? You want it to glow with subtle perfection, if at all possible, right? And then the next thing you should be doing is making sure your recommenders are in order. If you're having second thoughts about some recommender, maybe they don't know how to write and won't say that great things about you, try and track somebody better down. All right, so rather than rushing those applications out the door, I want you to take a clean, clear look at them now that the LSAT is out of your head, and really try and make sure that you don't neglect that part of the package, right? Because, obviously the LSAT and the GPA are such dominant factors that they're important almost to the exclusion of everything else. But what happens is a lot of really great scorers who have high GPAs, they kind of half-ass their application, right? And you can get a major little break that might push you over the edge into getting more scholarship money or getting into more schools if you just really put the time into that application. And that's something that maybe I didn't do as much as I would have liked to. So if I could, time travel, I would fix that a little bit. So don't make that same mistake. Make sure that PS really represents you, and make sure that when you read it, you're coming across as a very, very likable person. Try and get some distance for it and assess that. Do I come across as an entitled, snobby brat? Or am I somebody that I would admit to law school and be happy to meet, and to contribute to the intellectual environment there? So try and make those assessments and have other people who you trust make those assessments for you.
Yeah, have a couple friends take a look at it. People that you respect. I know, Evan, do you have any recommendations for if somebody is looking to, we don't have any relationships at all with any application people that help review your resumes, but do you have any that come to the top of your mind that you respect in the industry?
Yeah, I hear a lot of people say really good things about Peg Cheng. She's kind of a new face in the scene, so she's really helpful with PS, with personal statements from what I've heard, and she's pretty cheap because she's not quite as established as the other ones. And then I know Anne Levine is always trusted. I think she is somebody who's going to be really harsh and tell it to you like it is. If your package isn't that great, if your application package needs work, she's going to tell you that. Anna Ivey was a former dean at U Chicago where Josh and I went, so she's very well respected too. I think her price point is a little exorbitant perhaps, but these things can make a big difference if you're on the borderline. Because you're free.
I don't think that you have to go to somebody like that. These are just options that we want to throw out there for people who may be a little bit, thinking about going that route. And like I said, we don't get any kickbacks from any of these people. We don't have any formal relationships or affiliate relationships. So these are just this is just us kind of telling you what we think, as we so often do on the blog.
Yeah, and the other thing is, as far as we may not be the foremost experts on admissions in the world, but if you're in the mastermind group, we do try to do as much as we can to support you through that process with advice. And if you're in the group, I'm generally going to be happy to give a read of your personal statement. And so that's one more thing to consider. I was actually a professional writer for a lot of my young life. I was a ski and outdoor sports writer, and my identical twin is a professional writer, so maybe I have some credentials via him. And just one more point about that, like with this study group, another good thing is Josh and I are using the study group as a way to build knowledge and about the best way to teach this LSAT stuff. And once you're in there for life. We're going to give you anything that we come out with in the future, as far as an online course or anything. I don't know if we want to tip our hands too much, but we do have some pretty big stuff in the pipeline, and that's all going to come to you at a much cheaper price if you're in there now, as opposed to later when we maybe get more established and bump it up. So.
Right. So yeah, we are, like I said, we're like Evan kind of hinted, we are working on a version of a on-demand LSAT prep course for that'll be rolling out over the next several weeks. If you're in the mastermind group, you get that as part of your membership.
Yeah, and our price point's going to be higher. It's going to be higher on that than what you're paying right now for this. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So we'll probably wrap up, Evan, unless you have anything else. Again, I want to remind everybody, it's lawschool.com/LSAT mastermind. Visit that link and you can go ahead and join the group for $149. We're going to be giving that pricing for the next 24 hours, and then it'll go back up to the $179 price point. And actually, Wednesday we're closing enrollment as we're moving over into this, to other products that we're going to have in the pipeline, and we're going to be, capping it off because we're reaching capacity there. So please join if you're interested in joining. And even if you're not interested in joining, please visit our blog, ask questions in the comments. We really do try to, I know we have to prioritize our mastermind group, but we try to give as much free advice as we can on the blog every day and on Twitter and Facebook. So feel free to reach out to us there. You can also email me directly at joshua.craven@lawschoolie.com. You can email Evan at evan.jones@lawschoolie.com. And just feel free to reach out to us. We're here to help you guys. We've been doing this lawschoolie.com stuff for, what has it been, Evan? 18 months now, almost 2 years.
Yeah.
And it's been just the most just the best time of our lives. We've really enjoyed working with everybody, and we know how important your LSAT score and your law school application cycle is. Because we were there not too long ago at all, and we understand what you're going through, and we really want to help everybody do as well as they can. And that's been our mission since day one, and it continues to be today. And we just love waking up every day and being able to help you guys. So thank you so much for joining the webinar tonight. Thanks so much for reading the blog, for following us on Twitter, and following us on Facebook. And we wouldn't be here today if it weren't for you guys. So we really appreciate our audience. We really appreciate you guys. You guys are amazing, and I hope everybody had a good day today. If you didn't, I'm sorry. I'm sorry things didn't go as well as you had hoped, and hopefully we can help you get there on December or February. We want to see you have a great application cycle, regardless of how your score came back today, and we're dedicated to helping you get there. Evan, any final words?
Yeah, just a word of encouragement. You know, if you say you scored in the 150s or something, or even lower, well, there's so many things that you can do to improve the way you're thinking about these problems at that point. That there's really no reason to give up hope. So if you do want to attack this process, come in and devote yourself to it fully, and we'll help you with the motivation and we'll help you out and do the best we can to make sure that you get a score that you can be happy with.
Yeah, like I said, my first cold diagnostic score was a 152, and I got that up to 177. So if I can do it, so can you. And I'd love to show as many people as I can how I got there and how they can get there themselves. So um, it can be done, and I know how heartbreaking it can be to get a bad score, or a score that you weren't hoping to get. But don't worry, it's not the end of the world. It's honestly, now more than ever, it's not a big deal to have one, or even two scores. Not, you can do a lot. There's so much you can do to improve them, and those lower scores don't matter hardly at all anymore. So just stay in there. Keep your head in the game and crush it out next time. And for those of you who did get the scores that you wanted to get, congratulations. Please again stick with us, and we'll help you through the rest of your application process.
All right, guys. Have a good one. Talk to you soon.
Have a great night. Hopefully this was helpful. Please send us feedback on Twitter or Facebook or email. Let us know how things went and if we can help you out with anything specific. Have a great night, guys.
Take it easy. Bye.